He didn't want trouble, just a cold beer after visiting his buddy's grave. But when the young bartender saw his faded army jacket and called him another fake hero, everything changed. Because 3 blocks away, a group chat was already buzzing, and old soldiers don't abandon their brothers twice. Welcome to the Vietnam Stories. Before we begin this powerful Vietnam veteran story, let us know in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, don't forget to subscribe. Walking out of Riverside Cemetery on Jefferson Avenue, William Bill Morrison's shoulders felt heavier than usual. At 68, with graying hair and lines carved by Vietnam's sun and time, this man repeated the same ritual every month. 30 minutes at Tommy Kowalski's grave, talking to him quietly, checking if the flowers needed water. The words on Tommy's headstone were still clear. Thomas Michael Kowalski, 1952-1971, Vietnam veteran, beloved son and brother. But what the headstone didn't say was that Tommy had been carried on Bill's back, under enemy fire for 8 miles. It didn't say that Bill himself had been wounded by 2 grenade fragments while trying to save him. And most importantly, it didn't say Tommy's last words. "Get me home to my family, Bill, please." Tommy had whispered with blood-foaming lips. Bill had done it. He'd brought Tommy home, but he himself had never come home. That day in the Mekong Delta, 2 men died, one physically, the other spiritually. Now, sitting in his old Chevy pickup at the cemetery exit, he stared at Louisville's dark streets. It was 7 in the evening, and his body was tired, but more than that, his soul was weary. Talking to Tommy always had this effect. The weight of the past would settle on today. A beer wouldn't hurt, he thought quietly. He'd been careful not to be an alcoholic for 20 years, but some days just one in Tommy's memory. O'Malley's Pub sat at the end of Jefferson Avenue, in the heart of the working-class neighborhood, a small, dimly lit place. The neon Budweiser sign in the window flickered, and music from inside spilled onto the street. Bill had never been here before, but it looked like a local spot for truck drivers, factory workers, neighborhood folks. When he opened the door, tobacco smoke and stale beer filled his nostrils. The bar was fairly crowded. Most customers in their 20s and 30s, people fresh off their shifts, here to blow off steam. Bill's faded khaki army jacket and plain white t-shirt underneath didn't draw much attention here. He approached the bar and sat on an empty stool. The bartender was a guy in his mid-20s with hair slicked back with gel and tattoos on his arms. His name was probably Kyle or Brad, the type Bill expected. "What'll you have?" the bartender asked routinely and disinterestedly while drying a glass, not looking at Bill. "Budweiser, please, bottle," Bill replied calmly, hiding his fatigue. The bartender brought the beer and set it on the bar. $6, he said dryly. Bill pulled out his wallet and looked at the old cards inside. Social Security card, driver's license, and his old military ID. He handed the card to the bartender. "Military discount?" Bill asked quietly, hopefully. The bartender took the card, squinted, and started laughing. A loud, mocking laugh. "Seriously, Gramps? This is your military ID? Look, buddy, this fake ID might have worked in the 1980s, but we're in 2025 now. Real soldiers come from Iraq, Afghanistan. Old guys like you all tell the same story," the bartender said with a mocking smile while waving the card at Bill. Some customers at the bar turned to look. A few started smiling. Bill took his card back without saying anything. He just pulled $6 from his wallet and put it on the bar. "Thanks," Bill said quietly, taking a sip of his beer, keeping his anger inside. But the bartender wasn't finished. "Listen to this. Gramps here is trying to get a military discount with a fake ID. I bet he's never even been in the military, probably got that jacket from a garage sale," the bartender shouted to the customers proudly. Laughter rose. Some customers looked at Bill. Others started typing on their phones. Bill had finished half his beer. In the 2 hours since Tommy's grave, years of weight had accumulated on his shoulders, and now this disrespect. He couldn't take it anymore. He stood up. "Get the hell out of here, Gramps. Don't come back here putting on fake hero shows," the bartender yelled angrily, his voice full of insult. Bill left money, turned, and slowly walked to the door. The laughter and mocking comments behind him rang in his ears, but his face showed no expression. When he stepped outside, the cold October air hit his face. Walking toward his pickup, he pulled out his old phone from his pocket. An old Samsung model still had the Charlie Company list because he'd never deleted most numbers. He called the first number. "Carl, this is Bill. Morrison." "Yeah, Tommy's friend. Listen, at O'Malley's Pub on Jefferson Avenue. Yeah, I need some help. Can you be here in 30 minutes? Call the others too," Bill said into the phone, his voice containing suppressed anger and determination. Bill's voice was calm, but something inside was burning. For the first time in 43 years, he was assembling Charlie Company. As soon as Carl "Tank" Anderson hung up, he started calling his own list. Tank had started a construction company after returning from Vietnam and was now one of Louisville's most successful contractors. But tonight, he wasn't a construction contractor. Tonight, he was Sergeant Anderson. "Eddie? Tank calling. Bill's in trouble. O'Malley's Pub, Jefferson Avenue, come now," Tank said into the phone urgently. Eddie Medic Ramirez was a retired nurse but still volunteered at the Veterans Hospital. When he got Tank's call, he was watching the news on TV. "What kind of trouble?" Eddie asked anxiously but was already putting on his shoes. "I don't know, but if Bill's calling, it's serious. You call Pete, I'll call Marcus," Tank replied decisively. Within 15 minutes, 6 different phone calls were completed. Of the 8 surviving members of Charlie Company, 7 were in Louisville that night. 1 was on a business trip in Dallas, but they were considering booking him a flight. Bill sat in his pickup, watching the door of O'Malley's Pub. The noise inside had increased, so had the number of customers. The bartender was probably still telling his story, how the old fake veteran had been chased away. At 8:45, the first pickup appeared. Tank's black Chevy Silverado, followed by Medic's red Ford, then Pete Gunner Walsh's motorcycle and Marcus Bull Thompson's old Jeep. 4 had arrived. The others were on their way. Tank got out of his pickup. He was 66, hair silver but body still like granite. When he approached and saw Bill, he stopped. "What happened, Bill?" Tank asked anxiously and authoritatively. Bill told the story. Tommy's grave, the beer, the disrespect, the fake ID accusation. Tank's face hardened as he listened. "How's that little punk supposed to know your ID is real?" "Most of us, including ourselves, were 20 years old back then," Medic said angrily. "It's not about whether the ID is real or not. It's about respect," Pete said calmly but determinedly. Marcus, the biggest of the group, stood up. "What are we planning?" he asked, ready for action. "Nothing. Just, I don't know. Maybe we just go in and have a beer," Bill said hesitantly but decisively. "All of us?" Tank asked, raising his eyebrows with a slight smile. "All of us," Bill replied firmly. Just then, 2 more pickups appeared. Dave Radio Kim and Jim Preacher Collins had arrived. Now they were 7. "Terry's in Dallas, but he'll be here tomorrow morning," Tank said informatively. "Tonight's enough, let's go," Bill ordered decisively. When the door of O'Malley's Pub opened, the music stopped a bit. 7 men entered one after another, ages ranging from 60 to 70, but each had something in their posture, their walk, the determination in their eyes. Customers looked at them. Some saw a group of old men and lost interest, but some noticed something. The bartender didn't see Charlie Company. He was on the phone with a friend, probably telling about the fake ID incident from earlier. Tank approached the bar and waited. "Yes?" the bartender asked disinterestedly after hanging up. 7 beers, Budweiser bottles," Tank said calmly but authoritatively. "Sure, right away. By the way, something funny happened here earlier. An old man came in with a fake military ID," the bartender began telling cheerfully. Tank stopped him. That man was my commanding officer, Tank said with an icy voice, threateningly calm. The bartender stopped, turned. What? He asked in confusion. Like I said, that man was my commanding officer in Vietnam, 1971. Tank stated clearly, his eyes locked on the bartenders. The bartender started laughing. Come on, did you all agree on the same story too? He said mockingly. Meanwhile, Medic Pete, Marcus, and the others spread around the bar. It wasn't planned, but they automatically took positions. Kid, you might not even know that man's name, but for us, he's William Morrison. Bill, Sergeant Morrison, and we don't accept the disrespect you showed him, Marcus said threateningly. The bartender was getting tense now. The customers around were starting to pay attention too. Look, I was just doing my job. Fake ID, the bartender began defensively. It wasn't fake. I was the radio operator there. I recognize that ID, Dave said quietly but clearly. I was the field medic there. I recognize that ID too, Medic added determinedly. I was the machine gunner, and that ID is real, Pete stated coldly. The bartender was starting to panic now. Listen, I was just, he stammered fearfully. Shut up. Now listen, Tank said authoritatively without shouting. The pub had gone completely silent. Music was still playing, but no one was talking. That man visited his friend's grave who died in war today. He came here to have a beer in his honor. You called him a fake and humiliated him. We don't accept this, Tank explained slowly and threateningly. I'm sorry, the bartender whispered. Don't apologize to us, apologize to him, Marcus ordered sternly. He's not here, the bartender said helplessly. Outside, go and apologize, Tank ordered decisively. The bartender turned toward the bar with shaky steps, but Pete stopped him. Wait, look at this, Pete said, pulling out an old, faded photograph from his pocket. The photo was taken in 1971. 12 young soldiers in Vietnam forests, tired but smiling faces. In the center stood Sergeant Morrison, who looked only a few years older than the others. This is us, Charlie Company, 1st Infantry Division. That's Bill Morrison in the center. 3 days after this photo, the enemy ambushed us. That man saved 3 of us, even though he was wounded. Pete told emotionally but determinedly. The bartender looked at the photo, then looked at Bill through the window. Is this real? He asked hesitantly. Real. And now go outside and apologize, Tank ordered decisively. The bartender went outside trembling. Charlie Company followed him but kept their distance. Bill sat in his pickup holding a small stone he'd collected from Tommy's grave. He kept turning it over. Sir? The bartender approached hesitantly. Bill looked up. I'm sorry. I thought your ID was fake. I treated you disrespectfully. I'm truly sorry, the bartender said with sincere remorse. Bill looked at him. There was genuine regret in the young man's eyes. What's your name? Bill asked calmly. Kyle Henderson, the bartender replied shyly. Kyle, how old are you? Bill asked with interest. 24, Kyle said. Bill smiled. For the first time that evening. When I was your age, I was in Vietnam, long before you were born. It's normal that you wouldn't recognize me, Bill said understandingly. Kyle nodded. But next time someone shows you an old military ID, maybe you'll be a little more respectful, Bill added advisingly. Absolutely, sir, Kyle said determinedly. Bill got out of the pickup and extended his hand to Kyle. Accepted, Bill said forgivingly. Kyle shook his hand, relieved. Now how about we go in and have that beer? Bill suggested, turning to Charlie Company. Tank smiled. The commander orders, he said jokingly but respectfully. They all went inside together. This time the atmosphere was completely different. Kyle immediately brought 7 beers, didn't ask for payment. On us, Kyle said quietly. They raised their beers. For Tommy Kowalski, Bill said emotionally. For Tommy, Charlie Company repeated together. They drank. For Charlie Company, Tank said proudly. For Charlie Company, they all repeated together. They drank. For the brotherhood that never separates, Marcus said deeply. For the brotherhood that never separates, the whole group said together. And they drank one last time. An hour later, as they were leaving, Kyle approached Bill. "Sir, can I ask you something?" Kyle asked curiously. "Ask," Bill replied kindly. "I really thought your ID was fake, but your friends, how did they come so fast?" Kyle asked in amazement. Bill smiled. "Kyle, real friends are never far away. They're just a phone call away," Bill said wisely. Kyle nodded. "And Kyle?" Bill added. "Yes, sir?" Kyle listened attentively. "Next time an old veteran comes in, maybe buy him a beer. On us," Bill said generously. "Absolutely, sir," Kyle replied gratefully. Charlie Company scattered to their pickups, motorcycles, and jeeps. But before leaving, they all shook hands one more time. "Always ready, Commander," Tank said respectfully. "I know, just like always," Bill replied proudly. And they dispersed into the night, each returning to their own lives. But they all knew that tonight, after 43 years, Charlie Company had come together once more, and they were always ready. The next week, when Kyle was talking to his father, he told the story. His father was also a Vietnam veteran. "Son, thanks to those old men, you're here today, free. It's normal to show them respect," Kyle's father said wisely. Kyle nodded. Now he understood. O'Malley's pub now had a different atmosphere. Kyle treated every elderly customer more respectfully. And on the bar shelf, that old photo of Charlie Company stood. Underneath was a small note. "Real heroes are never alone." And Bill Morrison continued visiting Tommy's grave every month. But he no longer went straight home after the cemetery. He would stop by O'Malley's pub, raising a toast to Tommy's memory with the free beer Kyle brought. And every time he saw Charlie Company's list on his phone, he would smile. Because now he knew, real brotherhood never ends. This story reminds us that real heroes don't brag, don't tell stories. They're just quietly there. And when needed, they're always ready for their brothers. Have you ever met someone like Bill? Someone the world passed by, never realizing the silent weight they carried? What can we do, as neighbors, as listeners, as human beings, to help them feel seen? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because every veteran's story matters. Every trauma survivor deserves to be heard. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. At Vietnam Stories, we uncover the quiet courage of unsung heroes and remind the world that everyone deserves to come home, both physically and emotionally.